Hello, good afternoon. My name is Felipe. I am a young ambassador for the Earth Project, and we are doing a series of interviews for the Environmental Day. So today we're talking with Aoife Fleming from the World Youth for Climate Justice campaign. So if you could introduce yourself for us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm Aoife. I'm UN Youth Representative for Sustainable Development for the Netherlands. And I'm also a campaigner with World Youth for Climate Justice. And World Youth for Climate Justice to me is really the organization, the campaign that brings a legal approach to solving the climate crisis, taking into account a just approach into account. So I'm very, very happy to be working with them.
Okay, thank you if it's so if you could explain for us just what is the purpose of the World Youth for Climate Justice campaign?
Yes, great question. And we are World Youth for Climate Justice is a campaign that aims to bring climate change to the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice is the court of the United Nations. So we believe that this court is best situated to look at what does climate change and human rights, how are they connected, and what obligations do states have to solve the climate crisis.
So if you could explain like what are the relations between climate change and human rights?
It has many dimensions. Human rights are very much affected by climate change. For example, access to clean water, access to sanitation, also access to education. These are all rights that are being affected when climate impacts hit communities. So for example, if due to a rising sea level, there are more floodings, schools have to close, there might not be clean water anymore, then these are all ways in which your individual, your human rights are being impacted. And on the other hand, there's also the element of having just climate action. So that means when governments take climate action, they have to take into account, they have to engage communities who are most affected in the decision making. So I think there are two sort of sides to it. And then there's also the component of future generations, that whatever all the CO2 emissions that we are emitting today have to have effects on future generations, and we have to be mindful that we preserve the earth for them as well.
Okay, very interesting. So what kind of challenges are you facing in your campaign?
So we have an enormously ambitious goal as a campaign. We need to have 97 states, UN member states, voting in favor of putting climate change and human rights to the International Court of Justice. So that means we are organized. We have young people advocating World Youth for Climate Justice in different countries, and we're trying to reach the critical level of 97 states on our side. So we do that by sending letters to human rights ambassadors. We do that by doing academic research on the link between climate change and human rights, and how the International Court of Justice could help connect those two. And we collect stories of people who are most impacted by the climate crisis, so that we can present that as evidence to the International Court of Justice as well.
Okay, very incredible. And why do you think that an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice is important?
The advisory opinion is super important because even though we see great national climate cases happening, we need to make sure that all states are on board when it comes to climate action. So the advisory opinion can really be a way to make sure that also the states who are not doing enough to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions are stimulated to also catch up in the climate transition. And the court can really look at what does climate justice mean? What is a just approach to solving the climate crisis, taking into account human rights obligations? So I think there are different sort of facets to what the advisory opinion could bring. And lastly, I think also the ICJ, as the court of the UN, is really best situated to give guidance to national and regional courts where these climate cases are happening now.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you, Aoife. So, as a last question, what do you think is an action someone can take today, right now, after they watch this interview to help the environment?
That's a great question, and I think there is not sort of one right answer to this in general, but I think making sure that people are engaged in solving the climate crisis is very important. So that means talking to your friends, your family, your neighbors about what you can do as an individual, but also as a community to combat the climate crisis. And I think having an eye for the most vulnerable and for the people who the climate impacts are hitting hardest is key in that approach. So that would be, if I'm in any position to give advice, then I think that would be it.
Okay, thank you very much. If it was a pleasure to be talking with you today.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, always.